Hello and welcome to Victory Points. I'm here with I'm Becca Scott. We're going to start over.
Hey, welcome to Victory Points. This is Becca Scott.
And I'm Jake Michels. And this is a podcast about people who love tabletop games, interviewing other people who love tabletop games about the tabletop games they love and why they love those tabletop games.
When I said this is Becca Scott, I was pointing to you like you're Becca Scott. Like this is Becca Scott, introducing you.
No, we got it done.
We got it done.
So our guest this week is Johnny Recher. Johnny is not only the most badass second assistant director in all of Hollywood land, who travels the world being a boss on huge movies, but he's also one of the biggest tabletop RPG players I know. And that's saying something. Hi, Johnny.
Hi. Hello.
Oh, that was written in my notes. And that's saying something. It is, though, because I can think of very few people who have been on this podcast who aren't huge role players, and you are high on that list.
I'm trying. I got a late start to tabletop.
You got to catch
the
up.
Satanic Panic, man. So there was a lot of watching anime and playing video games growing up, and
Wait, you were
seems on brand.
As in, you fell for the Satanic Panic?
No, I didn't fall for it, but
okay.
it was just like all of you, because you need group,
yes.
right? You need friends.
Yeah.
And there was always like one friend whose parents had like Turmoil in the Toy Box, or one of those great like books from the 80s that explained exactly how evil Dungeons and Dragons was.
Oh.
Yeah. Or the booklets that they used to hand out.
The booklets, the pamphlets. Yeah. So, it wasn't until college, weirdly Bible college, which even then we did very illicitly. You had to like shut all of the doors. But then,
demons.
Yeah. And then finally, when you're very busy, the rise of a couple of the podcasts and, Tabletop, Acquisitions Incorporated, Nerd Poker, and then in Critical Role and all of that gives me kind of a way to do it vicariously when I can't actually sit with people. And then, I've kind of fallen back in love with it.
That's so cool.
Amazing. Well, we're going to talk about all those things. We're going to talk about why you love tabletop games that have an element of role-playing, which we've talked about on this podcast before with Gina DeVivo, but you're another one of those that loves those. More on the macabre side.
Oh, sure.
And I always say macabre, but it's macabre, isn't it?
I don't know. I feel like the votes, I think it's a foyer thing. Like, I think that there's a world where you can say macabre.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to have
to
twirl your mustache and say macabre.
Yeah. I do like the way you say that while you twirl, though.
It's tomato.
Yeah.
Correct. I say tomuto.
Yeah, right. We all do.
Let's call the whole thing off. Okay. Well, not only are we going to talk about that, I want to talk about a lot of the games you enjoy are Fantasy Flight games, as all of us love Fantasy Flight. So I want to talk about why they're so good at doing things so right. I don't have an answer to this. Maybe someone does in this room, hopefully. Oshi? He knows.
Yeah.
And then I want to discuss Elder Spell, which is a Fantasy Flight game that Johnny is a fan of. You can teach us all about it. And Mysterium, which is not. But we'll talk about it too from Libellum. All right. And of course, a shout out to the best 80s Dex game that involves marbles that isn't the one you think. Ooh. First, I have two quick pieces of news. Gen Con, just a month away.
Man,
That's close.
I don't know if I'm going or not.
Yeah.
Me neither at this
I
point.
would love to go. I love this event so much. I just have a magic-related commitment on Saturdays.
So you're doing like a ritual in the woods, is what you're saying.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Ritual sacrifice. Not you, Oshi. Don't get scared.
It's a tough one. I will fully admit I have never made it to the Gen Con. It's on the list.
You
It
will.
is definitely on the list.
You'll
That's
make
the
it
hope.
someday.
A lot of friends that go, but it's always like that window of Comic-Con to Gen Con.
Yeah, it's in the middle of it all.
It's very
quick.
busy,
Yeah.
and I'm usually very busy during that time.
In
and,
the summertime.
yeah, everybody crews up, and you can't really. It's like, guys, I really have to go play some D&D and find out about new board games for a week.
One of these days.
One of these days, fingers crossed.
One of these days, fingers crossed, you won't have work. No, just kidding. I don't wish for that. But only coinciding with Gen Con. And then also, so here's the thing about Magic the Gathering Arena. They've been hiring me for stuff and recommending me. So I am going to be in Florence for a tournament sponsored by Red Bull on Saturday, July 6th. So if you go to Twitch on that day, the Saturday after 4th of July, you might see such a tournament. So check it out. And that was my other piece of news.
Gen Con, by the way, is August 1st through the 4th.
Yep, thank you.
You're welcome.
I thought everyone just knew that. I didn't even put
I do
it in
have
my
it tattooed
notes.
on my arm, which is why I said it.
I have it
I have to
tattooed
get
on
it
my
changed
heart.
every year, which is a dumb tattoo. But
It's got lots of crossed out marks and new tattoos next
it's
to
a
it.
mess of August dates.
Oh, man. Okay. Johnny,
Yeah.
first question. How did you first start role-playing?
It was it's like there were a couple of times in college that we would do little things, but I tend to stay very busy in a wide variety of things. And folks would go, there was a guy, Kirby. His name was Mark, but he insisted on being called Kirby.
Absolutely.
We are playing every Wednesday night at 6:00. I just built a brand new pirate system on my own. We're going to do it. And I'd be like, oh, okay. And it's like, I would do a one-off, but something in college, you're just like, every Wednesday night sounds like a lot.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
I still kind of like
I still feel that way.
fear that kind of I have some friends that will play a Call of Cthulhu game every Sunday. And like every Sunday. And I just don't.
Yeah, that's intense.
I love Call of Cthulhu. Don't know if I want to do it every Sunday. But then some very dear friends of mine who out in LA, I kind of found my tribe out here. We're a bunch of guys from Emerson. My dear friend Dave Page and his friends. He'd been running the same map that he drew, world map that he drew at like 16. And he'd been playing in that world forever. And so at some point they realized that I'd been kind of left out in the rain due to the Satanic Panic. And they had a very important character to their world that he'd been playing as an NPC because his roommate had started and then left as we happened. So he's just like, and it's because again, when you've had the same map since 15, it's a time travel game through the 5,000 year history of this map. So this was the wizard with the time machine. So all of a sudden they're like, hey, Johnny, because I would come and just watch and enjoy the game. Because again, I go away for months at a time, come back, hey, what are we doing? And so they let me back in, and that's like my primary, that was kind of my primary gate back in. And now I've got way too many games for the amount of time I have in my life.
So cool that that's a great gateway is here's a character already made for you in a game that's already going.
Yeah.
Just jump in.
Yeah. I mean, it's
a blessing.
It's 3-5 and it's a wizard who she had picked all the wrong spells. And because we time travel, we're never in town. Like we all have like 10 gold to our name. Like, so I'm just like, sure. But you walk right in and it's great because you have a sense of who that character is.
Sure.
You can just kind of.
Sure is the right attitude to come into that too, especially because you are gone so much, you can't fully commit to it. So it's like, I'm just down for what's going on.
Let's do it.
And
this is a time to throw in, maybe you could say that's a Mize moment. I used it wrong. I learned a new word. And it means might as well.
Yeah.
You have to use it in the perfect context. It is
might as well.
It seems to be such a magic junkie now. Seems to be used by primarily magic players.
I don't know this phrase.
Get it out
somebody
there, yeah.
offers you a free thing and you go, huh, Mize.
Mice.
Ah.
That's might as well.
Yeah. So they offer you this character. Mize.
Mice.
Mize it up. Okay.
Yeah.
That's shout out
right.
to Mize.
New tattoo.
I was for sure convinced that I was being trolled and people were trying to get me to say this word so they could laugh at me that Becca thinks this is a thing. But apparently it's a thing because it was confirmed by multiple sources.
All right.
This is a thing. Yeah, so you Mize.
Might as well try and use it.
I don't know. I used it wrong. I'm pretty sure I used it wrong.
I'm going to try my next
practice.
show. I'm going to try to see who I can like infect that with.
Yeah.
Like what actor or crew member
get it to be
that
a
is
thing.
always doing press that if
Yeah.
I can just let's get this Mize thing out there. Let's do it.
But it's got to be in the context of something offered to you for free that you just think,
Mize.
Might as well. There's no loss in this.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
there might as well's got some like, might as well. But I
Yeah.
think Mize has got like a nice positive, like, Mize.
Does mice come from a magic thing where like you're about to get a bonus, you might as well take it?
Maybe it's, well, it's not what I needed, but I got a 1/1 creature, 1 drop, Mize.
All right, that sounds right.
Don't worry, I'll sprinkle in more magic stuff as the show goes on. This is where my brain is all the time. Okay, next question.
Mm-hmm.
You have traveled the world working on films like, I went to your IMDb page,
boy.
The Purge, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, Peppermint, Unicorn Store, Focus. How do you keep up with these RPGs while traveling? or do you find people to game with while you're there?
It's a mix. The D&D's hard.
Yeah.
Right? D&D's a hard thing to do. Like, I found out, shout out to Adam Hart and all the stunt guys on Purge election year, who are all big D&D fans. And we all found out that we were like, and it was all like, guys, we're going to roll up characters. We're going to do like, let's just buy a module and we'll just run it. And then we were on nights for 3 months.
Oh.
And so every Saturday, everybody just slept till 6 p.m. and we're just like, maybe we're not going to get to this D&D game.
Yeah, no kidding.
But, we swapped stories and got to kind of talk. But yeah, it's tough. And you Skype in when you can. And, it's something that as I've now in my downtime decided that being on a podcast would be fun, a D&D podcast. And we've started up. I now just travel with a mic, and we've set up a rig where we record and we Skype in when I need to. I haven't had to yet, but
you will have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And shout out the name of your podcast.
Oh, it's called Demon Dayz, an actual
Days.
day podcast, actual play. Yeah, and iTunes, Google. We just got up on Spotify. Just hit episode 10.
Nice.
I'm one of the players.
I was gonna say, are you a player? What's your class?
It's magic for me. My friends had a podcast network after the hype that I've been on a couple times talking about movies, something I like. And they were like, hey, we're doing this D&D thing. And it's great. I get to go and perform a bit and roll dice and not have to worry about someone else does all the editing and the wonderful Jonathan.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I just get to kind of be on the other side of things for a minute. It's fun.
Amazing.
But, yeah.
Now, speaking of the side you're normally on, what is it like to be on 3 months of night shoots? Does your body just get angry?
Weirdly, I kind of run that way, and my lovely partner Ray kind of run that way anyway when we're off. Like, we just say we're full vampires. Like, we're luckily both off because she's also in the industry as a set decorator, and we're both off these days. So we're running on like a hard like noon to 3 a.m. schedule.
Oh, wow.
Right now, which is fine because at some point it's going to switch, and we're all going to be getting up at 3 a.m. to go off and work on set. So I don't hate nights. I kind of like that all night. Because the rest of the world kind of quiets down.
Yeah, that's true.
And you're just in your own world anyway. Kind of on a film set together. You just kind of this weird traveling circus. And so particularly if you're out doing big crowd work and you're out on the streets and car chases and stuff.
Yeah, but you're coordinating the circus. That's what's nuts.
Yeah.
Because we mentioned you're a second AD, which I don't know if a lot of people know what a second AD does.
We should tell people what that is.
Yeah, it's one of the weird kind of hidden... Anytime that someone's like, I even had somebody was watching, here, get ready, Becca, there's a Game of Thrones video that's coming out now that's a behind the scenes of one of the battles. And you've got
that I haven't seen yet?
You may have, because it's a 50-50 of what the camera sees. And then you see a camera operator, and then you see a grip behind him holding them. And then you see like an effects guy throwing dust in Kit Harington's face. And then there's like another person who's just there kind of like playing very aggressive zone basketball, like around everything, and is running along with them. And I had a friend of mine from college write me and it's like, so Johnny, I was watching, who's that guy? And I had to write back and kind of say, that's pretty much me. Like, that's pretty much like the AD department. Essentially, there's a first, a second, or a second, and they're sometimes called a third. And essentially they run.
No, they're never called a third. They're called a second.
UK. Like, look at all the UK
come
stuff.
on.
I use it to find out.
Don't be logical, people in the UK. We like second.
Yeah, second. It's very confusing. But we manage and run the set. So we coordinate between all the departments. And sometimes that's, filling the Superdome in New Orleans full of extras to recreate the Super Bowl or the big game, I think, because we couldn't say Super Bowl. Sometimes that's just figuring out where the bathroom goes. In the desert. Well, we didn't. To
an extent.
We had about 1,500 extras that day, and then one of the day we shot for the day. We shot all the football stuff.
What film was this for?
For Focus. This is in Focus, which is a great movie. People should check out. I think it kind of before Suicide Squad. It's the movie that put Will Smith and Margot Robbie together. Oh. And I'm a big fan of it. And we recreated the big game in New Orleans, and so we took those 1,500 extras, and then we sent the rest of the crew home, and then we sat with the visual effects coordinator, and we tiled the entirety of the Superdome.
So cool.
Because they had figured out in visual effects which sections you could flip. Like they knew, they were like, these 15 sections, if we get these 15 sections and we get everybody cheering,
just reverse the image on the
other
side.
And fill in
the entire.
That's so cool.
Which was
wow.
great. My PA,
so copy and pasting sections of a crowd.
But you can't just have them like do the old like, video game Street Fighter 3 moves. Like
right.
with their arms going up and down and such. Yeah.
So essentially my PA staff got to play. We put them in the jerseys for each side so that people could pick. Because people, and they did, to shout out to the New Orleans Extras, they came. We gave them fake teams, and they came painted. They built their own signs.
Cool.
It was great. And so my PAs just played football for 4 hours while we just moved everybody around the stadium and tiled the whole thing. So it's,
So second AD work, that's really what you do.
It's all sorts of fun stuff of just making sure everybody gets on time.
I'm hearing maybe it's time we take a break.
Sure.
And you know what I say? Nice. So, in a few minutes, we'll be back. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. We have so many more things to talk about with Johnny Recher. All right, we are back. Welcome back to Victory Points, a podcast about board games and stuff. I'm Becca, here with Jake Michels, as always, my trusted co-host, and our guest, Johnny Recher.
Oh, hi.
Oh, hi again. We didn't go anywhere. That break was very short for us.
Stupid short.
Anyway.
It was great, though. I loved it.
Oh.
We should have stretched.
Yeah, we should have stretched. A seventh inning stretch.
Yeah, I feel refreshed.
Tile ourselves into the stadium and sing a song about the ball game. That's what the
I
focus
did
was
sing
about,
the
right?
national anthem on the 50-yard line of the Superdome because it was empty and I could.
That's amazing.
And the best part about it was the special effects coordinator walked out very dramatically and started singing harmony with me right about the middle. Sometimes being on a movie, you get to do insane. And that's like a special moment that's really just for me and him.
Yeah.
Because it was a completely empty,
a
completely empty stadium.
Miracles do happen. I love it. Well, hopefully in the first half of this podcast, people learned a little bit about what the heck a second AD does.
Yeah.
But now what people need to know is why do you specifically love tabletop games that sort of emulate that feeling of a TRPG or a TTRPG, depending on how pedantic you are with whether tabletop is 1 T or 2. And games like Betrayal at the House on the Hill, which I know is one of your favorites.
Yeah.
You like the Widow's Walk expansion?
Oh, man. It's the roof.
Yeah.
The whole time you're playing the game and you're like, horror movie, I got to run out on this roof.
You gotta.
And they finally were like, guys, we heard your cries. We heard your outcry.
Yeah.
Here's the roof.
Yeah, so you can outcry from there. What is it about this game that you love?
So what I like is I find that the Betrayal series does the best job of giving you all the pieces so that, like, what I find is I'll buy it as, like, when I'm out of town on a job, I'll just buy a copy and give it to someone. And there's a bunch of people that, for whatever reason, have never gotten to play it and want to.
What's wrong with them?
I know. So I just, because again, carting around a bunch of stuff in your luggage is kind of a nightmare. So I'll just go buy a copy and then give it to someone, and then we play it. Then they have it. But I love that it's without a dungeon master who then has to like prep a bunch of stuff, or even running a module. You have to read the module. Like there's a lot of buy-in to do for one person. I can get a bunch of folks together on a film set who want to hang out on a weekend, and we can get 4 or 5 people together. And I found Betrayal is the best at just automatic generation, where you've got characters that are archetypal enough that you can just jump in and just like you're the old. I always end up going for the old pastor,
the old priest.
Remember the old priest,
the professor,
or the little kid, or the jockey football, quarterback, and you can just, those roles exist, and it's a lot easier to kind of coax people. For me to try to get this tabletop fix that I'm missing, because trying to run a game, it's one thing if it's Skyping home to a campaign or a character that I just put on like a hat. And it's another thing to have to roll up. Everybody hates that first
session.
0 session,
Yeah.
rolling up your character, thing that you have to do. And then you've got also, there's one or two people that have never played, and you have to explain all of Dungeons and Dragons to them. So it's like,
So in 1985, Gary Gygax sat down with
Yeah, and this is 5th edition, which some people play Pathfinder, and like, no, just like, let's get into it. And I find Betrayal's easy, and there's just so many options. It plays differently every time. We do have the one house rule that I always bring with me.
Ooh, I love house rules.
During the haunt, when it happens, there's one of the haunts that I will let everybody vote. Like,
okay,
there's a hard vote. I don't know if you guys want to guess which one it is.
What do you mean you'll let everybody vote to just let that happen?
We look through the book.
What it should be. And there's one of the 50, 70 now with the expansion that I will just, all of a sudden we have to talk. And we talk about either like, do we let the next haunt happen, or do we just pick different items? Because I've played it 3 times. I don't know how, but it makes me crazy.
What is it? The free-for-all? I don't know that I've played all of them.
It's the mice.
Oh,
what are the mice?
Everyone turns into mice, and then there's a cat, and then you have to like get out of the house. And it's one of those. I understand that like if you're making like 70 different horror themed whatever, you're like, we're gonna throw in this really fun one that's going to be really quirky and subvert everybody's expectations. And for whatever stupid reason, the combination of
Tom and Jerry haunt.
Yeah, the room and the omen that summons it, I've just gotten it. And so for me, as someone who's like, there's this world of replayability that exists, it's the one on the list that I'll be like, hey guys. So unless you're all really stoked about being mice, we can either just pick at random, someone shut their eyes and put your finger on something, or we can let's see what the next haunt is.
That is so interesting, because I don't know that I've ever played the same haunt twice. And I'm going to say I probably played that game 15 times for the base game.
Yeah.
And I've never gotten this one. But that's what's funny. I'm not going to pretend that I understand anything about statistics, but statistically, what are the chances that you would have gotten that one 3 times?
Really low.
Never like in a row, and sometimes like it's been months since I've gotten to play, and so it's like, guys, what new weird? We've got all these tokens I've never used. How does the zombie work?
Is that a widow? Is that a widow walk one?
No, that's in the original.
It's a core one?
That's a core one. And so, yeah, the part of the reason getting the expansion, I'm like, this just ups the chances that we don't have to do the mice.
You know, going back to what you said about like it being able to easy to jump in as characters, I totally agree with that. There's something about those archetypes, and also about just the motif of the haunted house that people are just on board instantly.
Absolutely.
And because the first act of the game is always a cooperative in a lot of ways, there's no pressure.
And you
know the pressure's coming.
It's coming.
Yeah, but there's that. That's the fun of that.
And the turn is so much better. The more you put in, and if there's one or two people at the table that can kind of, again, like we all need that in even tabletop. You know, it's like I see the videos online of people like, if the guy just wants to say, I roll a charisma check, he should be allowed to. But I'm like, that's not why I'm there. But, there's a couple people at the table that can kind of guide people into that process a little bit.
Absolutely.
When the haunt happens, it can be absolutely just decimating.
Bonkers.
Yeah.
Oh man, I love this game so much. And yeah, it is such a gateway game. I think I've talked about it before, but my dear friend Dan, never ever let him be the haunt initiator, because every time he will say, wait, I gotta go in the other room and play by myself?
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, shout out to Dan.
Who's in the other room right now by himself.
Yeah. But I love that this is just such a staple that, I know what I was going to say. It's about the helpfulness of cliches in shortcutting your way into storytelling.
Yeah.
Because it gives you this opportunity to just jump right in without preamble, because you already know, this is my version of a jock. Got it. We all have those archetypes in our brains, and so cliches aren't always a bad thing.
And they've
Sometimes
always,
they're
and
so
they've
helpful.
already in a ton of media have also been subverted. So then you can also then play the very kind of jokey version of the old priest or the scary little girl, and that adds like even another layer of, it's like, someone can be playing this straight and someone can be getting kind of wacky with the cheerleader and the jock.
Absolutely.
I think
sneaking
cliches,
off on their own.
I think cliches are a good bridge to this hobby we have for people that don't do it, because there's some weird stuff that we do.
We cast
What?
spells at each
sure.
other. You know, we play these games where they're really gory, and for people that like aren't into the motifs and cultures that we are,
Yeah.
for them to jump in and just be like, okay, what is this? Oh, don't worry, you're just playing this old professor. Like, okay,
Yeah.
all right, sure, yeah, just go into this room and
Go in that room.
open
look,
this
look
chest
for clues.
Yeah, and like that's
There you
easy
go.
enough. You get it. Okay, I've seen this movie before, and then
Yeah.
they get on board, and then after the first session, they aren't playing the fighter who's an orphan again every time. You know,
Right.
they've learned to be something different.
I forgot those people exist. Honestly, I did. I met this wonderful woman a couple weeks ago, and she's like, "Oh, I don't like fantasy," and I was like, "No, you don't understand. You just what? No, but like a dragon
It's
or
weird
a magic
to shut off
spell."
a whole concept, right? Of fantasy.
But we were in this fantastical short digital series, and she was playing the girlfriend of an evil overlord, and the joke was that it's very rom-commy in that her scenes,
Right.
And so she was perfect for that because she didn't buy
play
into
that.
that world,
Yeah.
and didn't play into it, but then the finale of that, her character sort of takes on the role of the evil overlord. So we'll see if there's a season 2 for that thing. I'm not going to say what it is so I don't give too much away. But it's such a funny concept to me of not like accidentally falling into loving fantasy, because I feel like everybody has that potential. We all wish for the mystical. That's why this thing called religion has been so
A
popular
little bit
for
of magic
millennia.
in the world, guys.
Because people
That's what we
want to
all want.
believe
Yeah.
in things that are not things that we comprehend in our grounded, everyday life.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I mean, Game of Thrones was that too for a lot of people that didn't like fantasy at all, and
Yeah.
I think that made it mainstream for a ton of people.
That's right. That was the other thing. That's why I said yeah, because I was trying to remember my other point, which was Harry Potter.
Yeah, Harry Potter
Oh,
was a good
yeah.
one.
Pivotal,
Brought
pivotal,
wizards back.
pivotal for our generation
Yeah.
of just this foundation of, well, I was maybe 10 when the first book came out, and so those 8 years of wizards just were normal. Wizards are the thing.
Well, for most people, I got in a very famous fight with my college girlfriend's mother, who had purchased one of the new version of the Satanic Panic was that like Harry Potter is full of the devil and trying to make witches out of everybody.
Yeah.
And I just like, this is all Latin, right? And like we just got into it. Yeah.
What was her
So-
response? Because it is Latin.
It was a very heated. And I was just like, and got into Lewis and Tolkien and the history
Oh boy.
of like religious people in the 20th century writing fantasy and like, Wrinkle in Time and how like allegorical truth is if you want to talk
You went
religion,
down the rabbit hole.
we will, a whole separate podcast.
Satanic Panic, of course I've heard it because it rhymes, but
Yeah.
I didn't really know what this means. This was the thing where parents are afraid of their kids getting a hold of material. Tell me what Satanic Panic
So
means.
it was there, and there's lots of great kind of, you can find compilations of old kind of material on this. I remember my personal favorite one to share is an old 700 Club, like mini commercial that is like people playing Dungeons and Dragons. They're playing it wrong. They're playing like a board game. So they're like, the guy's moving the dragon around and then whatever. And then essentially they're like, you need to make a blood sacrifice or your character will die. And then you see him walk home and then like, walk his little brother out into the woods. Like that's the
Yeah.
end. Like
Yeah.
That is awesome.
and he's like, you want to play a game? Like it's real. Like
I was handed one of those pamphlets as a kid. Yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
Little did the 700 Club know they were making such awesome content.
it's really weird
I
and great
love
now.
that.
But and I mean, Turmoil in the Toy Box was like taken all down. Like the Smurfs are all French socialists that wanted to convert us all to some sort of weird communist like.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah, everybody that was too popular got like a big bullet, like
And
a big.
yet you were raised religious.
Yeah.
And you've gone so far in the other direction.
Well, I don't know. Like I still believe. I like to believe in a magical world. I believe that there's great mysteries that we don't understand.
Yeah.
And my parents were always just like, with all this stuff, to their credit, was like, read yourself, figure it out yourself. If you have questions, ask them. It's fine to doubt. It's fine to experience the great mysteries of the world. And yeah, to their credit, like I've given, they probably
What a great
Oh, man,
philosophy.
props.
Like,
That
yeah, I mean, yeah, that's not
still went Sunday mornings. But but
So they are still avid churchgoers.
not avid. Again, they've the
But
problem,
that attitude is so
but they
open.
still have a good attitude, and like
Yeah.
my sisters are raising their kids, trying to raise them the same way, trying to figure out how to navigate those waters. Because
Where's
like
the line?
I can't believe in a cold, non-magical world. Doesn't sound like much fun.
No, not at all.
Yeah. So
We got to believe in something. I was referencing your aesthetic inclination towards skulls
horror.
and horror and black leather, which I find absolutely charming.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I don't know. There's that. Perhaps there is something about as a kid, the darker stuff was always appealing. Again, because there was very much a like, don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't look at that. And that was tied also with the other big one from the 80s was a lot of the like anti-metal Satanism that goes along with that too. But it's like the cool t-shirts with like the skulls and you're just like, that all looks like a lot of fun. And the more people tell you to not do that, the more you kind of lean in towards it. And I was lucky enough, like growing up in the mid-Atlantic, like growing up in Maryland, is there's a couple buts that are like, yeah, except for Poe, because he's our guy and we love him.
There's a butt
so,
Poe.
Like, yeah, butt Poe.
Oh, solid.
So you're kind of like, yeah, but the Raven's just kind of spooky. It's about his dead wife. It's not too weird. So you just
It got ingrained in the culture a little bit.
Yeah, play in this sandbox. I mean, yeah, we're ghosts, all Civil War ghosts. So there's a certain amount of that kind of weird spookiness. I mean, I live right over the hill. I grew up from Burkittsville, Maryland, where the Blair Witch Project is supposed to take place. And we had a spook hill. We would, that was the big thing when you got your license, was to go over the hill and try to find where because we had one of those gravity hills that they've now repaved where like if you put your car in neutral, it'll roll up backwards. There was a big story about.
What does that mean?
Like,
Why does that happen?
Something about the equilibrium of the road to the hills, the shape of the hills in the background. It's an optical illusion. Like if you could see the world at like a full level, you're actually going downhill. But because everything else in the world is tilted a certain way, it feels and looks like you're going uphill.
Whoa.
So yeah, you go to, and the idea was you'd sprinkle some sugar or some flour on the bumper because these Civil War ghosts died pushing a cannon up the hill by some Confederate snipers, and they're still there pushing. So like you just put your car there, you put it in neutral, and the car just like rolls. And it does. I mean,
I love the lore
the
of
big
it.
tragedy,
so
and
interesting.
it was always like there was no geocache for it. It was like this road between here and here.
Yeah, there's no place
and you had to like
find
look
that.
on a map and find it. And
Right,
then, like,
back
you're
before all of our phones had GPS coordinates.
Yeah, and then like you're on random hills, being like, nope, I think is this the. You know.
Oh, so cool.
Yeah, that's always been like the appeal to me is, and again, like I'm not a mopey person personality wise.
No, you're not.
But there's always been appeal to me, like the great, and again, it partly religion's fault too, because like you go to Revelation, meteors falling from the sky, seas of blood, locusts, and I was just like, guys, this is really fun.
Yeah.
This is good storytelling.
If anything, like everybody's watching Good Omens because they picked out like the really good parts, and they're like, guys, this is nuts. And so, yeah,
Oh, amazing. I'm behind. I need to watch Good Omens on Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
Y'all get to it. It's David Tennant and
Michael Sheen.
Michael Sheen. Ooh, nice. Okay. Well, I feel like this segues well into a game that I wanted to talk about, which is one of your favorites from Fantasy Flight. And we'll get into Fantasy Flight a little more because they do Arkham Horror, Eldritch Horror, Mansions of Madness, which are all kind of dissimilar vibe.
Yeah.
But the game I want to talk about is Elder Spell.
Yeah.
You said you are a fan of this and you play it on your phone quite a bit.
It's great because it distills. It was one of the very early kind of mods that they did, and it takes all of the kind of very complicated. Like we've all played like not we all, but like we have all played like a 12-hour game of Arkham Horror, where you're like, I might need to take a bank loan out. Like that was the point where. My loving partner's eyes glazed over when all of a sudden they're like, well, you can get a bank loan in this game. And I was like, oh yeah. But it takes it down and it makes it dice based. So you essentially, your characters, when you're playing with multiple people, everybody kind of picks a role as like the investigator or the rich heiress. And each one of those characters has different abilities that lets them keep dice re-roll dice. And so, yeah, it's
cooperative, right?
It's cooperative.
You're trying to stave off the Lovecraftian
Whatever
demonic
horror.
beasts, the horrors.
Yeah, and the cool thing is for like a dice-based game, they also did a great job of all of the win conditions for the different monsters play differently. Ooh. And they did a great job also of translating that into the app as well, because you can, of course, Cthulhu is like a 2-stage process of like, you have to like do your research locally, and then you have to go on a boat.
Cite your
and then
sources.
It's a whole.
But there's no board. This is just a pretty simple dice rolling.
It's dice rolling, and so you get event cards, and again, these are cool because like it'll be like the cultists attack, and then you have to roll a certain amount of. They break it up into like spells are all mental stuff, and then you have like physical, and then there's icons on the dice, and you have to hit a certain number per. Like
encounter.
Whatever per encounter. Mm-hmm. And so, and again, you have different things that will give you extra dice. The shotguns and the torches and those kind of will lend towards the physical. That'll give you like an extra dice you can roll. Then there's spells that'll be like you can save certain things. So there's cards, there's dice. It's and I think there's even like a very nice board if you get the IRL version of it that you can kind of use to kind of help structure everything. But yeah, it's
when I looked it up, there's a clock that progresses your time. Yeah. Each round you move the clock up one.
Yeah. And
then there's the card for the monster or the horror.
Yeah.
And then there's individual player cards.
Yeah.
Where you keep your dice.
And in certain, what they're really good at is some of the more esoteric monsters, the grand big bads, are more kind of like they're their own isolated thing. Some of them, like Haster, are all about generating little spawns, like little other monsters. And then you have to, sometimes a monster will land on an event that may already have like a monster component, but all of a sudden now you have to both defeat the monster that's lurking on that spot and win the win condition for. So it's like there's different ways that things ramp up. Some people advance the clock faster. Some people throw a lot more monsters at you. So there's just within, and what I like about something Fantasy Flight does very well is kind of set their version of the Lovecraftian universe so that there are character archetypes that are run concurrently through all their games. Right. So if you have a favorite investigator from Arkham Horror, you can find them, and they probably have very similar, skills and buffs that they would in Arkham Horror. And they have, at this point, 30 different characters that you can kind of pick up and play with.
Very cool. So my question is, what feeling do you get after you played this game?
And again, like all good Lovecraft games should be, the win conditions are set fairly high. Okay. Like the Cthulhu run with like both stages, again, you get certain your bonuses and your equipment, the shotguns and the spells are, again, do I try to just play the ratio game and maybe I'll win where I've only got 4 dice and I need 4 results? Or do I add my other stuff? And then later in the game, you have maybe blown all of your good perks and you really need those dice to roll your way.
It's that gamble that you love.
It's the gamble. Mm-hmm. And even for the phone game, like you don't win very often. And sometimes that's a better personal, like my grandfather taught me to play poker when I was really young, and he'd always say you're playing the devil. You know what I mean? Like, so it's a lot easier to, like, nothing kind of bums out.
What does that mean? You're playing the devil?
Because you're always going to lose.
You're always, like Satanic Panic, like the idea the cards are inherently, there's something evil about them.
Yeah, that's why I like them.
But like if you're playing solitaire, because again, why are you playing solitaire? Well, I'm playing the devil. Like
I like
Maze.
it.
Might as well.
Mize.
So.
Mize. Maze is corn.
Yeah, maze is corn. Yeah.
Which you could find in a field as you stumble into it, looking for the Civil War ghosts to push your car back out to the road.
Yeah, so it's like you don't win often, which again, I like on the road that encourages replayability.
Yeah.
Whereas like at a group table setting, when you've all put like an hour into these games, and again, they reset pretty quick. It's not like the Arkham. I think that's part of the reason they made the dice version.
Right.
Was
Scale
that
it down.
Is like the same pieces and the same excitement of the bigger game, but you don't have to be like, hey, do you guys have like 7 or 8 hours? Yeah. I'll come an hour early and set the board up. And
It seems that it's distilled all of that lore and that beautiful artwork into a smaller package.
And in that smaller package, can we actually note the name again? Because you said Elder Spell, but
there's
Elder Sign?
Elder Sign is the name.
Sorry,
It's
I
okay,
just got
it's-
excited.
I just want to make sure
You want to know
because
why I got excited? Well, let me tell you about a card in War of the Spark, the new Magic the Gathering set called Elder Spell. It's a black and a black. You can destroy any number of target planeswalkers, then choose a planeswalker you control and put 2 loyalty counters on it for each planeswalker destroyed this way. Elder Sign is the name of the game. Elder Spell is the name of the Magic card.
Yeah.
Well, if you made it this far, you're still on board with it.
Elder something.
Yeah. Because I was looking it up. I was like, Elder Spell's not this game. But that's great.
And
I'd never seen that before. Well, I had just played Mansions of Madness for the
Second
first
edition?
time. Second edition for the first time just last week.
Well, tell us about Mansions of Madness Second Edition, because I've never played First Edition, but I know Second Edition is the one you want to get because that's where the app is.
Which was a really great little tool. It's you set up the board with tokens and icons just as you would in any kind of explore the mansion kind of game. But in this version, you actually have the map built out on the app as well based on the scenario you've chosen. And you can actually like touch the doors in the map, and then it reveals a dialogue. It provides music at different points.
Great. Yeah.
It
and
has
this
art.
is one within the world where you can play similar character archetypes based on this Lovecraftian genre that Fantasy Flight has a lot of rights to.
Yeah, and it just walks you through the scenario depending where you go in the house. So it kind of is a nice little butler for the game, you know? Because it's sometimes nice to have a rules master in the room, and the app does that for you.
I believe First Edition, someone had to play what the app plays.
Really?
I think so.
I didn't know that. Well, then this is a
played.
great innovation because it eliminates that role.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, they found ways to, throughout their kind of their sources, like with the same stuff as like, the Elder Sign has the dice conditions that you have to meet. So that kind of sets up your enemy player actions so that you don't really have to have that DM person present. And, in the Fantasy Flight games, I think they've done a very good job of kind of very, once you get it, again, somebody's got it. It helps if somebody knows the game. I would hate for a bunch of people to just pick up Arkham Horror and try to play
their nose is in the book half the time.
Yeah. But the monsters move on their own and it feels organic. It doesn't feel like it's too on rails. It feels...
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about Fantasy Flight, right?
Yeah. Well, one more thing I want to say about Mansions of Madness for anybody who hasn't played, highly, highly recommend. It is a big investment.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Because there are a lot of components. You get a lot in your box, but it's also... Once you've played all the scenarios, you're going to want more scenarios, and then there's expansions on top of that. So it is a pricey one, but if you're an addict, you gotta get the Mansions of Madness.
And there's really good communities up around this. This was something I didn't even know about. One of the players in my Pathfinder campaign is like a huge Arkham Horror buff, and there are so many customizations.
Oh, really?
That are online. So he has Jason Voorhees and Xenomorph and all of these other kind of horror outside of the Lovecraft kind of mythos that people online have kind of homebrewed.
That's great.
But they also have made, you can print out with artwork. Yeah, so there's a great kind of fan community around there too, homegrown
They've
stuff.
modded it already. That's great.
Yeah. Okay. Things that Fantasy Flight does extremely well, they really have cornered the market on games that are grandiose and big and feel expansive and have a whole world around them. And so kudos to them for pulling that off. And they're also not only integrating some of their games into an app, like with Mansions of Madness, you need the app to play, and so worthwhile to do that, but also that you've played Elder Sign on the app version. Also, Lords of Waterdeep.
Lord of Waterdeep is not.
That's not Fantasy Flight.
Twilight Imperium.
Twilight Imperium is the greatest game of all time.
It's just we haven't brought it up in a couple episodes, so I need to make sure I got in there.
No, it was in my notes. The best game ever, TI.
Game of Thrones board game is pretty popular as well.
Mm-hmm.
Another Fantasy Flight.
Yeah. Those are the ones I wanted to mention. All very expensive.
I've only vicariously been able to all of the great tabletop content that now exists. I've only been able to vicariously kind of get into Fallout, and I'm a huge Fallout guy. I'm still playing 76. I'm the only person. I'm very lonely. But growing up on the border between West Virginia and Maryland, like growing up on that border, I feel like I'm wandering around through the hills I grew up in.
Whoa.
So it could be buggy as hell. I'm still going to hang out because it's my people. So, but that Fallout experience I really want to have. I want to sit down and play with somebody who's really into it because I love the story.
Guess what? I got a copy.
I was gonna say, wait, which one is this? This is the Fallout game. It's called? What's the subtitle of it?
I believe it's just Fallout.
Nah, there's a.
Yeah, I'm trying to. It's because it is the
the one we
fantasy
played on the
flight
show?
version.
Yeah.
And I feel bad because somebody gave me a rat gift once.
It's just Fallout.
And I opened it up and it said Fallout on the top, and I thought I was like, oh, how did you know? And it was a chess set. It was just like a nice Fallout 4 chess set where all of the minis were like super mutants.
That's
and
cool.
That's a great rat gift.
It was a great, but I was just like,
so
close. Yeah, for a second I got super excited.
Yeah.
What? So, if you played it?
I haven't. I haven't gotten a chance to.
We
Again, I've
played it.
seen it play.
But you have played chess, right?
Yeah.
Great game.
Yeah,
Great game.
We'll get together some chess sometime.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fallout is wonderful. I think it is so close to capturing the essence of what a sandbox board game is. It's a little bit clunky.
Yeah.
Yes, it
Clunky,
is.
slow to get going, and by then somebody's already won. But there is a very fun storytelling component in the cards that feels like missions. I enjoy it.
It would be crazy. Maybe they can do a Mountains of Madness Bethesda Fantasy Flight.
Oh.
Yeah. Could you imagine with the app? The bunch
solid.
of cute,
solid.
like special cartoons. Guys, we're writing it for you.
Yeah.
We're coming up with this for
You're
you.
welcome.
But
I
like
agree.
a 2.0 that, because again, like some of those story cards where it's like go to 78 or whatever.
Yeah, that's what I agree. I agree with you, Becca. Like this,
So
the
close.
motif
I
of
loved
Fallout
it.
was there. Like I could taste the Nuka-Cola, but
Yeah.
like I felt like we were kind of on either two paths, and you kind of chose one or the other, which was the faction-based thing. And even from then, it was kind of luck-based with what you drew when you got there. Like you spent a lot of time invested in something, like on a path going somewhere. Then when you got there, it was simply a card draw for the outcome. Ooh. And that was fun and surprising. That was nice, but it also felt like you didn't have much control, which is what the Wasteland can be. Yeah. But I like I said, I think it did a good job of evoking the.
That's one of those that game, and I do. That's one of those few things I have. Collectibles. I have like a little shrine in my office that's. Some Fixer and some Mentats and Nuka-Cola.
Is the 76 community still around?
They're trying.
Yeah.
They're trying.
Yeah.
I mean, they just did. They tried. They're doing Battle Royale. They just launched a beta for it, and it's fun. I've avoided Battle Royale stuff because I don't really like to. I like to. Playing with other people online seems very impersonal to me, and it also feels like if I can hear your kids running around or your dog, or you're talking to your girlfriend about dinner,
you're ruining my experience.
It breaks the immersion because I want
Fallout is such an immersive game. Yeah, for sure.
So all the mechanics are there, so it makes sense for them to kind of like
go for it.
Mm-hmm. And there's a big like nuclear firestorm that is the kind of controlling aspect of it, which sometimes when that's slowly creeping over a hill, it's very cool to run away from that. But it's not. I would rather be wandering around the wasteland by myself.
Yeah.
I'm that way with video games in general. I like adventure-based games where I will never play the online version because I'm never going to put enough time in to be competitive in that way. And so, no, thank you. I want to experience the story as it was written.
My story, the one that I want, or as it was written, or as I want to
customize it. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you on that. I don't need to hear nobody's kids crying for dinner. And you say, shut up, I'm playing my game. All right. There's one more game I want to get to that I know you're a fan of, and I want to talk about because I don't know if we've really dug deep on it on the show yet. And this game is Mysterium. It was put out in 2015 by Libellud. Really? It's a French publisher. This game was acquired by Asmodee. It's 2 to 7 players. This is a cooperative game, pattern recognition. There's one player that is the ghost, essentially a clue giver, and then everyone else is a medium who's trying to figure out through clues that are on cards how the ghost died, and who which suspect killed them, and the room they were killed in. And each player is trying to figure out a different set of 3 given to them by the ghost. Yeah.
It's what I love. It's ghost Clue. If you wanted if you wanted Clue, because I loved Clue as a kid, moving around the board, picking up clues. But it's like the one outcome was always kind of a bummer because it doesn't lend you to a lot of speculation or trying to build the story behind it. It's just like, oh, it's this person and this object and this place.
Oh, you mean like it's just fact.
Yeah, it's very fact.
True.
And then those don't get revealed to the end, so it's a little... But like this, I love that everybody has their own thread that they're working on.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. And then the end result is trying to figure out which one is the real one, which
and you
one
get
is
to
the
share
right
that.
one.
Like in Clue, you're so against each other that you will never share the information, never talk about it. Mm-hmm. You will look at your thing and then you'll shut up.
Yeah.
Whereas this is the opposite.
It's cooperative and there's betting and I love it. For me, it bridges a nice gap where I have some friends that are really into the very stripped down Cards Against Humanity, red flags, where it's just like it's interpersonal in a way that I like because it encourages kind of conversation, but it's a board game on boards.
Party games.
You give me something cute to look at. Yeah. Give me something fun that I'm moving around, pieces, cool art. And some of that stuff just feels, and I like the simplicity of it. And Mysterium's a great middle where you have the big, almost like DM screen that tracks all the different threads for all the different players.
Yes.
And it's very tactile. And I like that aspect of it. Even the cards, the art is absolutely gorgeous and just all across kind of a very weird spectrum. And it's one of those great, because with your more conversational games, you can kind of get a clue into how your friends are, like what they're thinking. Mysterium is a magical, because it takes that to a whole nother level of like, are you into pattern recognition? Are you into colors? There's so many people that just go colors and shapes. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because I will try to be like, how does the story of this card of what's happening of like, there's a little boy riding a lion holding a key. And what am I trying to do to get you into that, nautical themed office? Like, how am I trying to get you to there? And then some people were like, it was a green one. And I was just like,
oh boy.
I got to rethink.
Now I could play with you.
Yeah.
I find that is a tricky game for me. I love it, but when I am the ghost and the ghost the clue giver player has to remain silent. Everybody else can chat as much as they want and help each other as much as they want, but the clue giver can't give any verbal clues.
Yeah.
So I find it very difficult because I will not think in that shapes and colors way. I will think very thematically.
Yeah.
And when other people are not thinking that way, you're like, I suck at this. This is so hard. But really, there's just different styles of thinking and reading your friends and learning in round one what type of clue receiver they are.
What are they going to dig into? Mm-hmm. And also, it's funny because what's the rest of you also have to play to the rest of the players.
Yes.
Because sometimes there's the one colors and shapes person or the one person who's going to just like go on to the dreaminess of it, or the one person who's going to, there's also people I found the third kind of version is that will look for, there is a literal key. And then it comes down to like having the right card to play, that like that person needs a very literal, and then sometimes you've already played that card.
Yeah, and the ghost has a full deck in front of them face down and draws, 7 cards into your hand?
To start. And then you're always kind of, as you give them out, and sometimes you have to give out a trash card. Like you just have to.
Sorry, getting rid of it.
That's a sacrifice you have to make.
And you're just like, maybe this green one, you're going to get what I'm, so that's.
But then they might, because then when you give them a clue next time, it becomes cumulative, and they might get so stuck on that trash card that it's hard.
There's also a component of like pounding the table in this game too.
Yeah, it's once for, in a classic seance sort of way. It's like once for yes, 2 for no.
Right.
Yeah. Or I might have that backwards.
When does that part
that's a
come
rule
in?
in the
I
game.
forgot
Yeah,
that rule.
that's the only way that the ghost can communicate is the like weird knock on the table.
That's so cool. I love that idea.
I like to play too with that second knock too. Like where you just knock and then wait for the second one. Just to like really kind of draw out. That's one of those things. I love the ghosting aspect of it. As someone who, for me, as a kid, sometimes whole other thing is like my family had I loved board games. It was hard for us to agree on one, and we also got very combative. Like we got there was a game of Wizard of Oz Trivial Pursuit.
Whew.
Where like game board thrown from the table, like it gets pretty intense. So I kind of
how many questions can one devise
about
specifically about Wizard of
Oz? Yeah, and like the people who are like a bigger fan of Wizard of Oz as a movie versus the people that know a little bit more about Hollywood history. And it just got very contentious. So I always like Monopoly, I'll play the banker. I'll just sit here and like watch everybody else kind of do their thing. So if you're that player, Mysterium is the ideal game for you get to be the ghost, kind of manipulate your friends a little bit and play with them, and you don't have to. It's a great, some people that's terrifying for them. They don't want to have that ghost mantle, but it's interesting. Because again, different ghosts, it's going to pick different cards. Maybe they are seeing the fourth dimension of like, oh, this person's really shape-space. This person's very literal. This person can kind of go into a dream. Oh, this invokes, I'm giving you a lion. That's got a wardrobe. I'm trying to do some Narnia thing. Like, do you vibe with me on this? You know? And so different ghosts kind of change the game as well. But yeah, it's
Narnia,
great.
There's a wardrobe, there's a lion, because it's all about association. Yeah, for sure. Oh, I love that. Okay, quick sidebar story. I know I gotta say that the coolest seance in the world is at the Magic Castle in Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever done the Harry Houdini room?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. Can you set the scene? Because it's so magical.
It's just like the classic sauce.
Yeah.
And like and I appreciate Becca and our, because we also, completely unrelated from, as much as we love tactile sitting at a table, you're one of my favorite like random adventure partners.
Thank you.
We go do the craziest, we have done some of the craziest stuff together. Sometimes it's a party. Sometimes it's a weird holiday someone's made up. Sometimes, but like, because what I do and my wife Ray and I, we will go to the Magic Castle. Well, there's kind of a theme already, but we go dressed like we're going to the Haunted Mansion at Disney World, because you're supposed to dress up.
Well, that's like, you guys on a Tuesday.
She's got like Urban Witch kind of covered as like a style. So we just go, and the spookier you're, not like a Halloween Town costume, but like the more that you look like you belong. Like we always get, when we go to the Magic Castle, just get picked for everything.
Here? Yeah.
My wedding ring got like attached, and we'd only been married for maybe a couple months to a trick to a string of wedding rings. On stage, and then like they pulled them all apart. I have no clue how I did it.
That's cool.
But I was like, take my skull-faced wedding ring and put it in the So, but it's like it's the classic. It's the room. You're there. It's like
they make the table float. They do a creepy thing with a doll that predicts people speaking from beyond the grave. I walked away with a genuine feeling that my grandfather had contacted me to tell me, say what's up to your little sister.
Oh yeah.
And
does he usually talk like that?
No, that's
up,
not
fam?
he said sup, fam.
Might as well talk to your.
Might say hey. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great. And the more that's one of those experiences, the more you put into it, the more you get out. But yeah, I go to escape rooms in costume. It's bad. I have a problem.
That's not a problem. That's a solution. And I do want to say that if anyone's played Dixit, that was sort of the precursor. I believe that was the first game, or at least the first big game from Le Belude.
Oh, is it? Oh, they're the same.
So,
I didn't.
Oh, yeah.
Because I always thought, they ripped off Dixit, but it is the same company. They evolved the concept they originated with this game of giving clues through visual cards. Jake, thoughts on Mysterium?
I loved it. When I played, I played it with only 2 other people one night when we had a guest in town, and she had wanted to play it really bad but hadn't been able to. And I was like, well, let's just go for it. And we opened the book, and I was the ghost, and it was one of the best experiences for like just 3 people to have.
No, sure.
Because it was so chill. Because I did not talk for like 2 hours.
It's fine.
And it was just wonderful speculation.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah. I think it's great that you can play up to 7 players, but it is a nice game for a smaller group.
It's also a pretty good gateway game, as you were saying. Like, really, the ghost has to be a pretty great with rules, and everybody else can kind of sit back and just have fun with the mystery.
Do you have dreams? Like, you know what I mean? It's like,
you
have you ever had a dream?
You know what this is.
Do you understand Clue as a concept? Seen the movie? That's on you.
Yeah.
But like, have you ever had a dream?
If you haven't seen the movie, stop everything you're doing. Go watch Clue the movie.
Flames?
On the sides of my face.
Yeah.
So Dixit is excellent. I would say Dixit is also a gateway version of this without the spooky theme and much more simple. One, you rotate who the judge is, and everybody else puts down their clue. You try to figure out which one the judge put in, and in the context of everything, with a word clue. Don't worry about it. But no, okay, so there are 3 games in this genre from Libellum. Libellude. You have to say it with a French accent, or I don't know how to pronounce this word. Libellude.
I'm going to just assume you're right.
Yeah. So Dixit came first, then Mysterium. And there's one that came out in 2018 that I want to recommend to everybody because I absolutely love it. It's called Shadows Amsterdam. And this is an innovation on this type of clue giver, clue receiver through a visual medium. And there is a board in this one made up of hexes of funny little kind of Zootopia-esque critters.
Yeah.
And there are 2 teams, and I believe you can only play with 4 people. Maybe you can play with 6 people of one clue giver on each team. And it's a race. It's a real-time race. You're on the same board, and you each have a little mover for your team, and whoever's the clue giver gives the other person a correlation of the direction they would like them to go because there are pictures on the board. And so, I want you to move towards to this recurring theme. There's a statue of a lion. And so in my hand of cards with clues, there's ones that it's a museum full of sculptures. So I'll play
trying to get people to
you to move your marker towards the lion on the board.
Yeah.
So it's a race. You have to hit a certain amount of checkpoints and get back to the start.
It is in real time. There's not turns.
No turns.
That's
just
cool.
fast.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's the evolution of this. Shadows Amsterdam.
I want to play that.
It's not rated as high as Mysterium on Board Game Geek, and I think this is a fluke, and I'm putting out the word. Shadows Amsterdam is very fun.
I get it. I would try it. I don't, as someone who in my day job faces a lot of real time clock pressure, I can understand. And again, there's a certain amount of that with Mysterium. There's you turn the
Oh yeah, there is that.
Yeah. So there's some time.
I like to throw out timers in games where you can throw out the timer.
It's yeah. So sometimes
different strokes for different folks. Maybe it's a different take on that for if you're in the mood for a more intense, fast-paced version that's more competitive versus the more relaxed, chill. Jake's silent for 2 hours as the ghost version. No?
I don't know what that sounds like on a mic.
That's a yes. All right. Well, friends, that's about it. But we do have to mention that 80s marbles game we said we would.
I was going to say you teased it. I'm ready
it's
to.
It's Mousetrap. No, it's not Mousetrap.
It's not Mousetrap.
What the heck is Run Yourself Ragged, a.k.a. Screwball Scramble?
Screwball Scramble. So again, as I was getting ready to sit down with you, because again, we could talk, and half the stuff I even put on, we haven't even talked. There's so much more to talk about.
So much.
This was one of my, and again, 2 little sisters. I had very things I was into, could never really get them on board with, whatever. And I think my mom was a counselor at the Boys and Girls Club. And I think I found this sitting in a waiting room because at the girls club, I couldn't go in with her. So I had to kind of sit in the lobby by myself. So the things that came from that were a weird love of professional wrestling because some girl punched me in the arm once, turned my cartoons to wrestling, and then that was the end of that. And they had this game, Run Yourself Ragged, which again, I think most people, I always saw it as something that somebody got rid of at a yard sale.
I saw it in yard sales.
Yeah, and without the box. I don't think I've ever seen the box. But it's this magical, as far as an analog version of, because again, at the same time, you were getting those little video games pre-Game Boy where you could only really move around because it was pre-printed on and it was limiting. And it's this was tactile and it's an obstacle course for one person. There's a timer, but again, who wants the timer?
Throw it out, burn them.
And there's stages, and each one of them is radically different, and each one of them has a different control. And some of them are very simple. It's like pushing a button. But the pushing of a button actuates a bridge, and then you have to guide the marble across the bridge. And then you can play through, and it's this whole course, and each obstacle plays differently. And there's a real finesse there. And for something that's just like a chunk of plastic, the amount of weird, this thing was made durable. Because again, I think that's yard sales because they last forever. And it's just this weird fun. And if you haven't picked it up for a while, It's just getting back in the habit of like trying to get those two little prongs to open up just wide enough that it's like a Rube Goldberg, not Rube Goldberg. Rube Goldberg.
Yeah.
For some reason, I was thinking of the Supreme Court Justice, and I didn't want to say that wrong. Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Yeah, but Rube Goldberg machine that you can play. And it's just a fascinating, I don't know, for me, being stuck by myself, it gave me all those tactile board game feels. And I found out under this new, I can't even get a Screwball Scramble.
Yeah.
Screwball Scramble, that it still exists. It's one of those things that like, when you're ever like, nostalgia, they still make it. So I am going to my 4 nieces and nephews are just all getting, that's what everybody's getting for their birthday. Is
There's something satisfying about mechanical games like that, right? I very much agree with that. The physical engineering of that thing.
Yeah, because I used to who else like skip to the end of Mousetrap and just build the trap?
Yeah, right? I didn't ever play Mousetrap.
No one ever played the game.
Never.
So this was like skip all that, and it's just, you don't even have to, it's all set there for you. It works reliably well. Like, it's not one of these things that's kind of built and then like, this might not work. Like, your success rate with a little patience is fairly high. Like, they didn't.
So there's like levers you pull on the sides to make the marble do what you want it to do.
Each station has an individual numbered control. And one of them is like a covered labyrinth, which is crazy. Like, you kick the ball up into this encased plastic loaf that has like a maze in it, and then your little controller tilts it's crazy.
Ooh, satisfying.
The amount of
it is satisfying.
Just weird engineering that went into this kids game, and I thought it was lost to time, and people had to go like Jumanji style find it in an attic or like buy it at a yard sale. But apparently, under this new name, it is out in the world, and you can pick it up.
All right. Well, there's Johnny's advice to you. Go pick up Run Yourself Ragged, aka Screwball Scrabble. And all right, well, that's all the time we have. Final thoughts for our listeners?
This was such a great episode. Thank you for sharing.
Hey, I like talking. I do it professionally.
I like talking to you.
But I rarely get to talk about games and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to have you back sometime.
I will shamelessly plug my D&D podcast.
Please
if that's
plug
okay.
again. Yes.
We're 10 episodes in. It's called Demon Dayz. It is and again, there's a lot of options. We are an all tiefling party. So
a tea party?
Yeah, it's a tea party. All tiefling party, but we all come from very different backgrounds. We start off, we've all been mysteriously used in some ritual. We wake up after the fact. We don't know each other, and then it's kind of a great mystery. So there's a lot of secrets. There's a lot of each of us. We're all demons, but we all come from very different backgrounds.
Every tiefling I've had has had a secret.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. You guys are secret machines.
And I love mine. Grew up in hell. Like, I grew up in the city of Dis. I like to think of the hierarchy of hell as like a mob situation. So I'm very much like a very low-level mob informer who gets whisked off on this thing. So a lot of Yakuza and Triad and mob that's kind of the basis for my character Feder. Nice. And we're just on an adventure, and it's been a lot of fun.
Amazing.
And jump in.
Well, make sure you check out Demon Dayz if you like D&D or you like Johnny, which of course everyone does.
What?
Therefore, you'll have to do it. All right. Thanks so much for listening to Victory Points. Make sure you like and subscribe and rate and do all the things so that more people can find this podcast. And we'll see you next time.
Mice.
Mice.